Hey you guys, good morning. Well, it's getting to be afternoon by the time that I get this all uploaded and done. But I hope that you had a great day yesterday. I hope that you got to enjoy some of the sunshine. Um, yeah, I know that I was outside for a little bit yesterday after I got all my schoolwork done. Got through my staff meetings, then got through more schoolwork. Then I got to go outside. I hope that you took advantage of the visualization, activity. And even if you haven't done it yet, if you want to do it or you want to do another scene, I would still love to see them. I love the ones that I've seen so far. They are awesome. You guys are incredible. I will show you mine. I'm no artist. I tried to do the scene where they looked over and they saw Hedwig, or not Hedwig, the hippogriff, Buckbeak the hippogriff, in Hagrid's hut on top of the rug by the fireplace. And I accidentally drew him standing up instead of laying down, which is how it was in the book. But when I was thinking about drawing it, I was just thinking of him standing there, like with his wings up, which probably there's not enough room for. But and then I drew like a fire in it. Oh, I'll just show you. Here we go. This is him. These are my art skills in attempt. Then I drew like a fireplace because they said that it was snowing outside and it's almost Christmas time. And then this was my attempt at drawing a wooden crate with a flobberworm inside. And I know that Hagrid said that most of them had died in there, but I thought that it would be a cute detail to go in the background. I guess I'm hoping that maybe one survived. I don't really know what happened to his claw right here. This one got a little weird. This one's all right, but so that's my scene, and this is kind of what I was visualizing. When I think of Hagrid's hut, I think that he probably has a wooden walls and wooden floors, and then I thought that there'd probably be a stone fireplace, obviously, inside there, and maybe even some stone along the bottom. I'm not sure, but when I think of his hut, I think of it as wooden. So that was my attempt, and I hope that you guys had a great time doing that. And again, you can keep sending them to me. The trip to Hagrid's, though far from fun, had nevertheless had the effect Ron and Hermione had hoped. Though Harry had by no means forgotten about Sirius Black, he couldn't brood constantly on revenge if he wanted to help Hagrid win his case against the Committee for the Disposal of Dangerous Creatures. He, Ron, and Hermione went to the library the next day and returned to the empty common room laden with books which might help prepare a defense for Buckbeak. The three of them sat in front of the roaring fire, slowly turning the pages of dusty volumes about famous cases of marauding beasts, speaking occasionally when they ran across something relevant. Here's something. There was a case in 1722, but the hippogriff was convicted. Oh, look what they did to it. That's disgusting. This might help. A manticore savaged someone in 1296. Whoa, that's a long time ago. And they let the manticore off. Oh, no, that was only because everyone was too scared to go near it, so they just let it go. Meanwhile, in the rest of the castle, the usual magnificent Christmas decorations had been put up, despite the fact that hardly any of the students remained to enjoy them. Thick streamers of holly and mistletoe were strung along the corridors, mysterious lights shone from inside every suit of armor, and the great hall was filled with its usual 12 Christmas trees, glittering with golden stars. A powerful and delicious smell of cooking pervaded the corridors, and by Christmas Eve it had grown so strong that even Scabbers poked his nose out of the shelter of Ron's pocket to sniff hopefully in the air. On Christmas morning, Harry was woken by Ron throwing his pillow at him. "Oi, presents!" Harry reached for his glasses and put them on, squinting through the semi-darkness to the foot of his bed, where a small heap of parcels, which means packages, had arrived. Ron was already ripping the paper off his own presents. Another jumper from Mom. Maroon, again. See if you got one. Remember, a jumper is like a thick sweater. Harry had. Mrs. Weasley had sent him a scarlet jumper with a Gryffindor lion knitted on the front, also a dozen home-baked mince pies, some Christmas cake, and a box of nut brittle. As he moved all of these things aside, he saw a long, thin package lying underneath. "What's that?" said Ron, looking over a freshly unwrapped pair of maroon socks in his hand, probably also from his mom. "I don't know." Harry ripped the package open, and gasped as a magnificent, gleaming broomstick rolled out onto his bedspread. Ron dropped his socks and jumped off his bed for a closer look. I don't believe it, he said. It was a firebolt, identical to the dream broom Harry had gone to see every day when he was staying in Diagon Alley. Its handle glittered as he picked it up. He could feel it vibrating and let go. It hung in mid-air, unsupported, at exactly the right height for him to mount it, which means to get on it. His eyes moved from the golden registration number at the top of the handle right down to the perfectly smooth, streamlined birch twigs that made up the tail. Who sent that to you? Said Ron in a hushed voice. Look and see if there's a card, said Harry. Ron ripped apart the firebolt wrappings. Nothing. Blimey, who'd spend that much money on you? Brooms are easily we'd convert them over to $1,500 to $3,000. So this is a lot of money. Well, said Harry, feeling stunned, I'm betting it wasn't the Dursleys. I bet it was Dumbledore, said Ron, now walking around and around the firebolt, taking in every glorious inch. He sent you the invisibility cloak anonymously. That was my dad's, though, said Harry. Dumbledore was just passing it on to me because he had it. He wouldn't spend hundreds of galleons on me. Remember, galleons are wizard money. He can't go giving students stuff like this. He'd have to give it to everybody. That's why he wouldn't say it was from him, said Ron, in case some git like Malfoy said it was favoritism. Hey, Harry, Ron had a great whooping of laughter. Malfoy, wait till he sees you on this broom. They never should have switched with Hufflepuff. He'll be sick as a pig. This is an international standard broom. This is incredible. I can't believe this, Harry muttered, running a hand along the firebolt, while Ron sank into Harry's bed, laughing his head off at the thought of Malfoy. Who? I know, said Ron, controlling himself. I know. Who could it have been? Lupin? What? Said Harry, now starting to laugh to himself. Lupin? Listen, if he had this much gold, he'd be able to buy himself some new robes. Yeah, but he likes you, said Ron, and he was away when your Nimbus got smashed, and he might have heard about it and decided to visit Diagon Alley and get this for you. What do you mean, he was away, said Harry. He was ill when I was playing in that match. Well, he wasn't in the hospital wing, said Ron. I was there cleaning out the bedpans. Remember the detention from Snape? Harry frowned at Ron. I can't see Lupin affording something like this. What are you two laughing about? Hermione had just come in wearing her dressing gown and carrying Crookshanks, who was looking very grumpy with a string of tinsel tied around his neck. Ooh, Hermione's dressing up that cat. Don't bring him in here, said Ron, hurriedly snatching Scabbers from the depths of his bed and stowing him in his pajama pocket. But Hermione wasn't listening. She dropped Crookshanks onto Seamus's empty bed and stared open-mouthed at the firebolt. Oh, Harry! Who sent you that? No idea, said Harry. There wasn't a card or anything with it. To his great surprise, Hermione did not appear either excited or intrigued by this news. On the contrary, her face fell, and she bit her lip. What's the matter with you? Said Ron. I don't know, said Hermione slowly, but it's a bit odd, isn't it? I mean, this is supposed to be quite a good broom, isn't it? Remember, Hermione doesn't know anything about Quidditch. Or she doesn't know much. Ron sighed exasperately. It's the best broom there is, Hermione. So it must have been really expensive. Probably costs more than all the Slytherin's brooms put together, said Ron happily. Well, who'd send Harry something as expensive as that and not even tell him that they sent it, said Hermione. Who cares, said Ron impatiently. Listen, Harry, can I have a go on it? Can I? I don't think anyone should ride that broom just yet, said Hermione. Harry and Ron both looked at her. What do you think Harry's going to do with it? Sweep the floor? Said Ron, but before Hermione could answer, Crookshanks sprang from Seamus's bed right at Ron's chest. Get him out of here, Ron bellowed as Crookshanks' claws ripped his pajamas and Scabbers attempted a wild escape over his shoulder. Ron seized Scabbers by the tail and aimed a misjudged kick at Crookshanks, which hit the trunk at the end of Harry's bed, knocking it over and causing Ron to hop on the spot, howling with pain. Crookshanks' fur suddenly stood on end. A shrill, tiny whistling was filling the room. The pocket sneakoscope, remember the gift that they'd given him, had become dislodged from Uncle Vernon's old sock, and it was whirling and gleaming on the floor. "Oh, I forgot about that," said Harry, bending down and picking up the sneakoscope. "I never wear those socks if I can help it." The sneakoscope whirled and whistled in his palm. Remember that a sneakoscope goes like super crazy whenever there's anything mischievous going on around or something not right or blah, blah, blah. It's like a dark magic detector kind of, or mischievous detector. And Harry just got this broomstick, kind of weird. It whirled and whistled in his palm. Crookshanks was hissing and spitting at it. "You'd better take that cat out of here, Hermione," said Ron furiously. He was sitting on Harry's bed, nursing his toe. "Can't you shut that thing up?" he added to Harry, as Hermione strode out of the room, Crookshanks' yellow eyes still fixed maliciously or angrily or like deadly on Ron. Harry stuffed the sneakoscope back into the socks and threw it into his trunk. All that he could be heard now was Ron's stifled moans of pain and rage. Scabbers was huddled in Ron's hand. It had been quite a while since Harry had seen him out of Ron's pocket, and he was unpleasantly surprised to see Scabbers, once so fat, was now very skinny. Patches of fur seemed to have fallen out, too. "He's not looking too good, is he?" said Harry. "It's stress," said Ron. "He'll be fine if that stupid great furball would just leave him alone." But Harry, remembering what the woman at the magical menagerie had said about rats only living 3 years, couldn't help feeling that unless Scabbers had powers that he had never revealed, he was reaching the end of his life. And despite Ron's frequent complaints that Scabbers was both boring and useless, he was sure Ron would be very miserable if Scabbers died. Christmas spirit was definitely thin on the ground in the Hogwarts common room that morning. Hermione had shut Crookshanks in her dormitory, but was furious with Ron for trying to kick him. Ron was still fuming about Crookshanks' fresh attempt to eat Scabbers. Harry gave up trying to make them talk to each other and devoted himself to examining the firebolt, which he had brought down to the common room with him. For some reason, this seemed to annoy Hermione as well. She didn't say anything, but she kept looking darkly at the broom, as though it too had been criticizing her cat. At lunchtime, they went down to the great hall to find that the house tables had been moved against the walls again, and that a single table, set for 12, stood in the middle of the room. Professor Dumbledore, McGonagall, Snape, Sprout, and Flitwick were all there. Professors Dumbledore, McGonagall, Snape, Sprout, and Flitwick were there, along with Filch, the caretaker, who had taken off his usual brown coat and was wearing a very old, rather moldy-looking tailcoat, like a nice dress suit type thing. There were only 3 other students, 2 extremely nervous-looking first years, and a sullen-faced Slytherin 5th year. "Merry Christmas," said Dumbledore as Harry, Ron, and Hermione approached the table. "As there are so few of us, it seemed foolish to use the house tables. Sit down, sit down." Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat down side by side at the end of the table. "Crackers," said Dumbledore enthusiastically, offering the end of a large silver one to Snape, who took it reluctantly and tugged. These are not like crackers that you eat. They're like firework crackers. Like you pull on them and there's like a little explosion, and a lot of times gifts fall out of them. Well, these are magical crackers, so they're not just an explosion and a gift. They are something magical that's happening. So he pulled out a long silver one to Snape, who took it reluctantly and tugged. With a bang like a gunshot, the cracker flew apart to reveal a large pointed witch's hat, topped with a stuffed vulture, just like Neville's grandma's. Remember the Boggart scene? Harry, remembering the Boggart, caught Ron's eye, and they both grinned. Snape's mouth was thinned, and he pushed the hat towards Dumbledore, who happily swapped it out for his wizard's hat at once. Ugh. Which makes me laugh. I love Dumbledore. "Tuck in," he advised, beaming around. As Harry was helping himself to roast potatoes, the doors of the great hall opened again. It was Professor Trelawney gliding toward them as though she was on wheels. Remember, she's the divination teacher, kind of the big glasses. Ooh. She had put on a green sequenced dress in honor of the occasion, making her look more than ever like a glittering, oversized dragonfly. "Sybil, this is a pleasant surprise," said Dumbledore, standing up. "I've been crystal gazing, headmaster," said Professor Trelawney, in her mistiest, most faraway voice. "And to my astonishment, I saw myself abandoning my solitary luncheon and coming to join you. Who am I to refuse the promptings of fate? I at once hastened from my tower, and I do beg you to forgive my lateness." "Certainly, certainly," said Dumbledore, his eyes twinkling. "Let me draw you up a chair." And he did indeed draw up a chair in midair with his wand, which revolved for a few seconds before falling with a thud between Professor Snape and McGonagall. Professor Trelawney, however, did not sit down. Her enormous eyes had been roving around the table, and she suddenly uttered a kind of soft scream. "I dare not, headmaster. If I join the table, we shall be 13. Nothing could be more unlucky. Never forget that when 13 dine, like eat, together, the first to rise will be the first to die." "We'll risk it, Sybil," said Professor McGonagall impatiently. "Do sit down. The turkey's getting very cold." Professor Trelawney hesitated, then lowered herself into the empty chair, eyes shut and mouth clenched tight, as though expecting a thunderbolt to hit the table. Professor McGonagall poked a large spoon into the nearest tureen. "Tripe, Sybil?" Professor Trelawney ignored her. Eyes open again, she looked around once more and said, "But where is dear Professor Lupin?" "I'm afraid the poor fellow is ill again," said Dumbledore, indicating that everybody should start serving themselves. "Most unfortunate that it should happen on Christmas Day." "But you surely already knew that, Sybil," said Professor McGonagall, her eyebrows raised. She's making fun of her because she's supposed to be like this fortune teller, and she's asking where he is. Professor McGonagall, she's salty. Professor Trelawney gave Professor McGonagall a very cold look. "Certainly I knew, Minerva," she said quietly, "but one does not parade the fact that one is all-knowing. I frequently act as though I am not possessed of the inner eye, so as not to make others nervous." "That explains a great deal," said Professor McGonagall. Professor Trelawney's voice suddenly became a good deal less misty. "If you must know, Minerva, I have seen that poor Professor Lupin will not be with us for very long. He seems aware himself, and that his time is short. He positively fled when I offered to crystal gaze for him." "Imagine that," said Professor McGonagall dryly. "I doubt," said Dumbledore in a cheerful but slightly raised voice, which put an end to Professor McGonagall and Professor Trelawney's conversation, "that Professor Lupin is in any immediate danger. Severus, you've made the potion for him again?" "Yes, headmaster," said Snape. "Good," said Dumbledore. "Then he should be up and about in no time. Derek, have you had any of the turkey? It's excellent." The first-year boy went furiously red on being addressed directly by Dumbledore, and then took the platter with trembling hands. Professor Trelawney behaved almost normally until the very end of Christmas dinner, 2 hours later, full to bustling with Christmas dinner and still wearing... Professor Trelawney behaved almost normally until the very end of Christmas dinner, 2 hours later. Full to bursting with Christmas dinner and still wearing their cracker hats, Harry and Ron got up first from the table, and she shrieked loudly, "My dears, which of you left his seat first? Which?" I don't know," said Ron, looking uneasily at Harry. "I doubt it'll make much difference," said Professor McGonagall coldly, "unless a mad axeman is waiting outside the doors to slaughter the first into the entrance hall." Even Ron laughed. Professor Trelawney looked highly offended. "Coming?" Harry said to Hermione. "No," Hermione muttered. I want a quick word with Professor McGonagall." "Probably trying to see if she can take any more classes," yawned Ron as he made his way into the entrance hall, which was completely devoid of mad axemen. When they reached the portrait hole, they found Sir Cadogan enjoying a Christmas party with a couple of monks, several previous headmasters of Hogwarts, and his fat pony. He pushed up his visor and toasted them with a flagon of mead. "Merry Christmas, password?" "Scurvy cur," said Ron. "And the same to you," roared Sir Cadogan, as the painting swung forward to admit them into the common room. Harry went straight up to the dormitory, collected his firebolt and the broomstick servicing kit Hermione had given him for his birthday, brought them downstairs, and tried to find something to do to the firebolt. However, there were no bent twigs to clip, and the handle was so shiny it seemed pointless to try and polish it. He and Ron simply sat admiring it from every angle until the portrait hole opened and Hermione came in, accompanied by Professor McGonagall. Ooh, I bet I know what she did. Though Professor McGonagall was head of Gryffindor House, Harry had only seen her in the common room once before, and that had been to make a very grave announcement. He and Ron stared at her, both holding the firebolt. Hermione walked around them, sat down, picked up the nearest book, and hid her face in it. "So that's it, is it?" said Professor McGonagall beadily, walking over to the fireside, staring at the firebolt. "Miss Granger has just informed me that you have been sent a broomstick, Potter." Harry and Ron looked around at Hermione. They could see her forehead reddening over the top of the book, which was upside down. "May I?" said Professor McGonagall, but she didn't wait for an answer before pulling the firebolt out of their hands. She examined it carefully from handle to twig ends. And there was no note at all, Potter? No card? No message of any kind?" "No," said Harry blankly. "I see," said Professor McGonagall. "Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to confiscate this, Potter." "What?" said Harry, scrambling to his feet. "Why?" "It'll need to be checked for jinxes," said Professor McGonagall. "Of course, I am no expert, but I dare say Madam Hooch and Professor Flitwick will strip it down." "Strip it down?" repeated Ron, as though Professor McGonagall was mad. "It shouldn't take more than a few weeks," said Professor McGonagall. "You will have it back if we are sure it is jinx-free." "There's nothing wrong with it," said Harry, his voice shaking slightly. "Honestly, Professor." "You can't know that, Potter," said Professor McGonagall quite kindly. "Not until you've flown it. At any rate, and I'm afraid this is out of the question until we are certain that it has not been tampered with. I shall keep you informed." Professor McGonagall turned on her heel and carried the firebolt out of the portrait hole, which closed behind her. Harry stood there, staring after her. The tin of high-finished polish was still clutched in his hand. Ron, however, rounded on Hermione. "What did you go running to McGonagall for?" Hermione threw her book aside. She was still pink in the face, but stood up and faced Ron defiantly. "Because I thought, and Professor McGonagall agrees with me, that broom was probably sent to Harry by Sirius Black." End of the chapter. Dang, there's going to be some fights with that friendship. I understand why Harry and Ron would be mad, especially Harry, but I think Hermione's right. You got to do the right thing. That could be a cursed broom. All right, you guys have a great day. The sun is shining, the wind is blowing, but hopefully you're able to get outside and enjoy it a little bit, and I will talk to you soon.